Dear friends, good morning. Wish you all happy Deepavali. It is my proud privilege to welcome you on behalf of Professor Bramsingh Horticulture Foundation, BSHF, a not-for-profit organization, and my own behalf to this 5H webinar series, talk number 15. BSHF is thankful to NIPA, New India Publishing Agency, New Delhi, for sponsoring this webinar series. I am happy to welcome co-organizers Dr. Peetam Kalia, ICR Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Awardee, former Head Division of Vegetable Science and Coordinator, School of Horticulture Sciences, ICR IRI New Delhi, and Dr. Shalendra Rajan, former Director ICR Central Institute of Subtropical Horticulture, Lucknow. Today, the webinar is on future trends in horticultural fresh produce quality, safety, and traceability by Dr. Sukhvinder Pal Singh, who is Institute Director, New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, the Sydney University, Australia. He would formally be introduced by Dr. Peetam Kalia. Friends, the importance of horticultural fresh produce can hardly be overemphasized along with the problem faced. Fresh produce, attribute such as appearance, texture, flavor, nutrition value, all these have been the part of the quality criterion. We need the quality produce. So these were the criterion. But interestingly, now safety and traceability are important for all the players in the chain of the supply chain, along with the supply chain, starting from farm to the consumer. And the non-destructive techniques for analyzing the quality of fresh produce. If you destruct the produce, then you lose the produce. But by mere seeing non-destructive technique, by using all those, if you can judge all these things which I have talked about, that is important. And these are the valuable tools applicable along with the supply chain. That's what I think Dr. Fishing, along with other things we'll be talking about. Now, various post-harvest physical, chemical, and gaseous treatments can be applied to maintain the fresh like quality. I emphasize the word fresh like quality without compromising the sensory and nutritional aspects. These are all important. Then the traceability. I think he is going to cover traceability in detail, which is important, is considered today a crucial factor for all the food items and other commodities also. The specific definition of traceability, I think he will be educating you much more on that. But it is say what I understood from a common man point of view, the quality concerned from see producer to supplier and supplier to producer and all the players in between. So you can just any point you can try to find out what is what. And what is what, that I think Dr. S.P. Singh will be talking about. I don't want to dwell upon the details of the subject. He will be highlighting all the things about that. And as usual, questions can be raised in comment or chat box, which we take up after the talk. Now I request Dr. Peetam Kaliaji to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Most respected Professor Brahm Singh ji, founder of BSHF, and my colleague Dr. Shailendra Rajan ji, co-organizer, and today's speaker, none else than Dr. Sukhvinder Pal Singh, who has joined us from Australia. We are grateful to him for having spared time to speak to the audience and deliberate on the important subject that he has chosen, the topic of future trends in horticulture, horticultural fresh produce, quality, safety, and traceability. Dr. Sukhvinder Pal Singh is the Institute Director at the New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, located near Sydney in Australia. He leads the Horticulture Food Safety Research Program, which is focused on developing and translating new technologies and solutions to improve food safety and traceability in the horticulture sector. As a leading scientist expert in Australia, Dr. Sukhrindipal Singh currently leads projects of national importance such as Safe Melons, Safe Citrus, and digital traceability. Additionally, his research role provides professional services through his elected roles as the vice chairman of the post harvest and quality assurance division at the International Society of Horticultural Science. And he is also treasurer of Australian Society of Horticultural Science. He is also associate editor of the International Horticulture Science and Biotechnology Journal and holds a conjoint faculty position at the University of Newcastle. So, with these important positions and the important biodata of Dr. Sukhrinder Pal Singh, I invite him to take the floor and deliver his talk. Dr. Sukhrinder Pal Singh, please.
Thank you, Professor Kalia, for introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Brahm Singh Horticulture Science Foundation for this opportunity to share my views and opinions and scientific facts on the future trends in horticultural science, especially in food safety, quality, and traceability. Uh, I would like to share my screen and start the presentation. So before I start my presentation, I would like to share with you all who we are and what we do. Uh, I work at New South Wales Department of Primary Industries. As you would know, New South Wales is one of the states in Australia, with Sydney its capital. And our organization, New South Wales DPI, we use the acronym, is Australia's largest agricultural R&D organization. In terms of the quality of science that we do, we are globally ranked among top 1% institutes in plant, animal, and environmental science research. And the state government invests over $1 billion in making primary industries stronger and resilient. So our purpose is to make primary industries stronger. So primary industries in Australia, it includes agriculture, biosecurity, fisheries, forestry, and anything that is linked to primary production of food, fiber, and timber, and, and fisheries. So before I get into the topic, just to give you an idea, in the state primary industry sector is valued nearly $20 billion. Wheat is the biggest commodity with over $4 billion output per annum, followed by cattle, beef cattle, which is $2.5 billion. And horticulture is the third largest primary industry sector in New South Wales with around $2 billion GDP. Overall, about one third of all the production is exported to various markets, primarily to Asian countries. So, talking about horticulture, the $2 billion industry in the state, the top five commodities are berries. These are especially blueberries and raspberries, approximately $250 million worth. And then oranges, again, over $200 million, almonds, macadamias, approximately $100 million each, and mushrooms. So the state has varied soil and climatic conditions and grows a range of fruit, vegetables, nursery, and turf products across the state. So the topic that I have chosen today is future trends in fresh horticultural produce, what quality, safety, and traceability. So I'm going to talk about the opportunities that horticulture sector brings, and the challenges, especially in terms of how to deliver uh, high quality, safe, and traceable product to consumers all over the world. And then later I'll touch upon some of the trends, what is new in this area, and then I'll share some of the overview of projects that we are doing to achieve these objectives. First, if we look at the opportunity in terms of global food demand, the population is likely to uh, reach 9 billion by 2050, and the demand for food globally would reach nearly 5 trillion US dollar by 2050, which would be 60 to 70% increase from the current value. And the food demand in Asia would be nearly $3 trillion. So out of $5 trillion, $3 trillion worth of food would be required in Asia. And if we look at the split of different types of food products, you look on the screen on the left-hand side, you can see fruit and vegetables. They're going to be nearly half of the total food demand, much ahead than other sectors like meat, dairy, and cereal. So this projection is very a strong opportunity that the horticulture sector presents in terms of increasing demand for fruit, vegetables, and nuts. So on the bottom of the slide, you can see Australian food production. So Australia at the moment produces food for nearly 60 million people. As you might know, Australia's population is approximately 5 million. So it's a food surplus country. In terms of value, it's valued nearly $60 billion at 2020 rates. So Australian agriculture and food industry is aspiring to increase its value by 2030 to 100 billion Australian dollars and potentially to $200 billion by 2050. But if you look at the share of horticulture at present, say at 2020 value, it was $15 billion out of $60 billion total agriculture production. So it's nearly one fourth of the total agriculture GDP. That shows how important this sector is even for Australia. Food Innovation Australia Limited, an organization in Australia, did a comprehensive study on how to increase the value of food and agribusiness. Where are the opportunities that Australia is missing? So, though this study was conducted in Australia, but some of the highlights are also relevant to countries like India. So, without going into the detail, this report says sustainability and supply chain transformation are two areas where there's huge opportunity for growth and improving the efficiency and making the production and supply sustainable, though it's relevant to Australia. But as I say, in India, the supply chain transformation would probably the number one factor in terms of where agri-food value chains are missing. And the other areas where you can expect double-digit growths over next, say, 10 to 20 years is precision ag and big data, how to cut the food loss and waste, especially in developing and transitioning economies. And technology in small farms is another area where we are missing a reward in the supply chain. So, in terms of opportunity in the Indian context, we all know that the problem of food loss is huge. According to some reports, up to one third can be lost in the supply chain, starting from the farm to the markets. But the problem is quite similar in Australia, but it is food waste. So, food waste is mainly at the consumer end. And another issue that we have very common in Australia is very high quality standards. That means a lot of produce goes to waste on farm because it doesn't meet the cosmetic quality standard of the produce. Though we have really good supply chain conditions in Australia, good network, roads, infrastructure, cool chain, but the magnitude of food loss or waste is quite similar to India, but it's mainly because of the uh, uh, always evolving quality standards just to meet the consumer expectations. So, as I said, there are huge opportunities in terms of global food demand and demand for fresh fruit and vegetables. But if you look at the challenges that we are going to face in supplying and producing these commodities, they are huge. If you look at multicolored uh, um, ribbon at the top of the slide, starting from left, climate change, globalization and trade, income growth and distribution, urbanization, population growth and migration, politics and leadership, socio-cultural context, all these factors, they add to the horticulture sector's ability to supply fruit and vegetables, uh, whether within their own countries or in export markets. So, if I look at the supply chain, starting from the consumer, consumers are becoming wealthier, pickier, they are informed, and consumers, cultures, tradition, and ethnicities, they do matter in what they eat and how they source and from where they source. And the other trends in global markets like personalized nutrition, plant based, and alternative proteins, these trends are actually shaping the food production systems and supply chains. Sustainability, and I'm going to talk a bit more about traceability and transparency, food provenance, and on top of that, consumers in developed countries, they are really concerned about um, animal and human welfare. So, in case of when they're consuming meat products, they want to know how the meat animals were raised and how they were treated. And then, in terms of human welfare, how labor was treated, whether they were given proper wages, and what were the working conditions for growers. And then finally, ethical sourcing. So, all these things, all these factors are now driving consumers to look at bit beyond what they used to look at just the commodity. So, if a piece of fruit or vegetable is the consumer is not only interested in the end product, consumer is interested in the whole supply chain and from where it is coming. So, one step before consumer is distribution and export. Uh, it is becoming really challenging to gain market access. For example, several horticulture industries, they are desperate to get into markets like India and Japan and few other countries. So there are phytosanitary barriers, and some are very political and economic barriers to get into those markets. So distribution and export of products is really affecting the industries, and there are several other issues in distribution and export. For example, maintaining quality along the chain. Australian horticulture industries which are currently exporting, and they're looking to export into India. For them, the supply chain conditions, especially the lack of continued cool chain and bit of infrastructure in the country is becoming a serious issue, or a barrier to exporting to India. And similarly, there are other issues like geopolitical and trade conflicts. They are adding on to fresh produce trade in the globalized scenario. If you come back to the grower in the supply chain and food production, especially in terms of fruit and vegetables, it's becoming more consumer centric, and it's really difficult for some growers to grow uh, the products that consumer really want. For example, a typical example is in Indian market, there's strong demand for delicious apples, but in a country like Australia, which mainly growing pink lady and gala apples, so it's really hard for growers to change their varieties, especially in case of perennial horticulture crops. So at the food production end, it's again challenges in terms of natural resources and climatic conditions, the bad weather, and biosecurity issues, and there is a whole range of production challenges that industry faces, whether we are in India or in Australia. So, as I said, opportunity is huge, and opportunities are always coupled to challenges. So, you can see the list of challenges is even much bigger compared to the opportunity that exists. So, if you look at the trends in terms, I'll first talk about quality. Quality, the definition and scope of quality is changing. And traditionally, or even at 2020, even from Australian perspective, high quality means the product is safe, nutritious, is tasty, it looks good, and it's properly labeled. So that's the current definition of high quality. So the definition of quality, as I said, it's very relative compared. So it depends upon the consumer, it depends upon their socioeconomic status, their ethnicity. So there are a whole range of factors which affect the perception of quality, what it means, and how it can be delivered. What we are seeing, that heading towards 2050, or even I should say it should be 2030, uh, the definition and scope both are going to expand extraordinarily in the next 10 years. For example, safety is something which is consumer is interested in, uh, fresh produce which has zero or ultra low residues in terms of the chemical and pesticide use. The product has to be free from any microbial pathogens. That is very basic, that is non-negotiable. uh, and now consumers are linking the consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables with their health and wellness benefits that they achieve. And then flavor, rather than just simple taste, is increasingly becoming important. There are a lot of breeding programs which are now targeting flavor rather than just production and productivity or the yield. Similarly, there are few other things which are adding on to quality. For example, sustainability. By sustainability, I mean consumer is interested to know the water footprint of the produce, how much water was used, and how far the produce has traveled, what is the carbon footprint of the produce, and then during production, whether there was any adverse impact on the local ecosystem. For example, some of our horticultural production systems, they are known for environmental pollution. For example, some of our crops grown in hydroponics or even soilless cultivation of berries and few other indoor crops, there could be a huge amount of nitrogen going into the environment. So that creates a question mark on the sustainability of the produce. So consumer is interested in sustainability aspects of produce. Then authenticity, they want to know from where it came and who grew it, whether is it authentic. And then traceability, I'll talk a bit later. And finally, the ethics and data rich labeling. So when I said data rich labeling, that means a label which provides complete information about the quality, the safety, about the origin, about all the above factors that are listed in this slide. So the consumer would be moving from high quality product demand to differentiated quality. So it's up to the growers and the industry, how do they produce and supply differentiated quality. So at the moment, Australia is known for its clean, green, and safe reputation. As I said, Australian horticulture industry is $15 billion industry, and we have nearly 10 to 12% of exports, which is nearly $2 billion export. Our export from Australia is dominated by nearly $500 million of table grapes, then $500 million of citrus, and then $500 million of almonds. So these are three top commodities that Australia exports. And some of the markets where Australia exports, they are quite tough markets. So Australia gets premium price in those markets because of various reasons, such as I mentioned, clean, green, and safe reputation. And then Australia also does a lot of promotion in various markets within Australia and overseas. Taste Australia is an international campaign to promote the Australian produce. Good Mood Food is another Australian campaign to increase the consumption of especially vegetables among population. And then say healthy, nutritious, and safe. These are like some industry specific campaigns. We are currently happy with these promotion and marketing campaigns, but what we are seeing that the nature of these campaigns would change over time. Heading towards 2050, these buzzwords are not good enough. Consumers will be looking for scientifically proven, clinically validated, and data-based claim. So rather than making generic claims, you have to provide more specific information about the product that you want to promote. So we will see a trend going towards health and wellness claims like high in something or low in something or free from something. And then we will also need to make sure that our products are either carbon neutral or carbon negative. So sustainability at the moment, industry in Australia has developed a sustainability framework. They are working on it. How to convince the consumer that these products are carbon neutral or carbon negative. Similarly, labor and input use claims in Australia, supermarkets, some of them they require the growers to go through a third-party audited program called SEDEX or Fair Farms. Fair Farms is an Australian program which audits the growers for their labor workforce. They just want to make sure that they have been properly treated, paid, and looked after on farm. So supermarkets are pressing those growers to have that certification. And then supply chain transparency, that how do we transfer the data based on the whole history of the product. So heading towards 2050, you will see a dramatic change in terms of quality and how it is perceived and how it is proven to the consumer. Second aspect that I want to touch upon is food safety. As I said, the Good Mood Food, it's a campaign. We all know the health benefits that fresh fruit and vegetables bring with their consumption. But Fresh fruit and vegetables, they are also known for uh, wo- acting as carriers of foodborne pathogens. For example, some bacterial pathogens like Salmonella, Listeria monocytogenes, or Stachy coli. Those pathogens can cause food poisoning, gastro events. Sometimes they can even cause permanent failure of kidney or other vital organs, or even deaths. So, a good mood food, if it is not safe or if it's contaminated, it can also spoil the mood of the consumer. So, a study published few years ago actually analyzed 571 outbreaks between 1980 and 2016. They were primarily from Europe and North America, where they had 72,000 nearly infections and 173 deaths. What they found that leafy greens, especially lettuce and spinach, they are responsible for more than half of reported outbreaks. And secondly, contaminated soft fruits like raspberries, strawberries, and others, they were responsible for nearly 27% of infections. And the most common strains were E. coli and some strains of salmonella, noroviruses, hepatitis. So they were like the leading pathogens. So the most relevant produce and microorganism pairing you can see on the slide on the left, salad is the most common, like especially the bagged salads. They are commonly implicated, and then followed by lettuce, raspberries, fruit, and alfalfa sprouts, cantaloupes, tomatoes, and whole range of things. On the right is the microorganisms. So noroviruses are the leading cause, followed by Salmonella, E. coli, and some parasites. So the idea of showing this slide is that fresh produce can also serve as a vehicle of these pathogens which can make consumers sick. So why we are seeing more and more outbreaks linked to fresh produce? What has changed recently? So I think on the left hand side, you see I'm trying to put a balance. On the left hand side is the industry. So fresh produce industry has actually improved its food safety standards over years. The global consumption and trade of fresh produce has increased many folds over years, and but that all adds to the fact that the more number of outbreaks are linked to fresh produce, because food and health regulators now they have better diagnostic, they have better surveillance, and they use whole genome sequencing in traceback investigations. Since the whole genome sequencing came in picture, the number of foodborne illness outbreaks linked to produce have skyrocketed. So, how does this microbial contamination and cross contamination occur? Most of these pathogens that I talked, like Salmonella, E. coli, or Listeria, they are present in the environment, mainly linked to the animals, domestic as well as wildlife. So these are like zoonotic pathogens. So they get transferred from environment to production fields. The transfer can happen with irrigation water or soil amendments like manures and compost. And these pathogens can also get transferred through dust storms and wildlife visiting the production field. So, from the field, if the product is going to a packing shed, then the contaminated fruit then moves to the packing shed, and other carriers could be machinery and workers. They can all carry the pathogens to pack house. So this is a microbial contamination continuum that is very generic in nature, but it holds true for most of the cases. So the study which actually analyzed those outbreaks between 1980 and 2016, as I said, most of the outbreaks they cannot be linked to any contamination source, but contaminated water, contaminated manure. These are the two major inputs which are associated with Salmonella and E. coli contamination of produce on farm. In case of processing facilities, Listeria monocytogenes, which is an environmental pathogen, it can establish in the processing facilities and can cause contamination and cross-contamination of produce. So processing or packing facilities can also add on to it. And infected handler is one of another cause. So in terms of contamination, you can see that water and manure are two leading causes for pre-harvest contamination of produce. Climate is changing and it's impacting the food safety. So in terms of our current focus, that we want to study how water is being impacted, because if water is impacted by climate change, whether it's from the animals, so if animals are stressed, they can shed more foodborne bacterial pathogens like Salmonella and E. coli. If water bodies or water sources are getting contaminated through runoff or through any other means, so ultimately these um, pathogens are going to be transferred to fresh produce. Weather events such as dust storms or floods, they also add on to the contamination route, and it makes it worse. Traditionally, horticulture and livestock industries, they have coexisted. As you can see, picture on the slide on the left, you can see it's a horticulture production area. On the right, taken a picture from a source that I haven't mentioned here. But yeah, it's a picture of a cattle feedlot. So if there's any extreme weather event of flooding or dust storm, there's a huge potential for microbial pathogens to be transferred from this cattle feedlot to the horticulture production regions. So some other events like dust storm, they are common in Australia's dust storm path. It passes through several horticulturally important regions. You can see on the slide that this is a dust ball. So if this dust ball is carrying microbial as well as any other chemical contaminants, the produce, fresh fruit or vegetables coming in the path of this dust storm can be rendered unfit for consumption. So these are the impacts of weather events on food safety of fresh produce. Another photo of flooding. This is a recent picture from New South Wales state. So the flooding is becoming quite intense and short duration, heavy rainfall. So these flood events can actually contaminate the production fields, and they can carry contamination over large distances. So that's another contributory factor. How to deal with it? As most of the industries in Australia, they had food safety schemes, quality assurance programs in place, which were third-party audited, but they were volunteer QI programs. And then later on, supermarkets brought in their additional layer. But several countries like United States and Canada, they have now adopted regulation for horticulture sector. Until very recently, in Australia, horticulture sector was unregulated. But from 2025, melons, berries, and leafy vegetables will come under a regulation to monitor the food safety practices. So regulation is coming into picture because of this increasing association of fresh produce with more foodborne illness outbreaks among consumers. So how it's going to change at the moment, we can say that there's a compliance culture. There's both proactive compliance, where we look for food safety and foodborne pathogens, and there's also reactive surveillance, which means responding to an outbreak. So there's a whole range of food safety control measures in place, and there's a lot of compliance action, and there are maximum residue limits for chemicals, and growers use lab-based diagnostics, and there's a whole process of random sampling and testing, but it's mainly through regulatory compliance and resource use compliance. But the the world is heading towards a bit more from just compliance to culture, that how we can promote this food safety culture so that there's less need of enforcing the laws. So from proactive and reactive surveillance, the focus would shift towards proactive and preventative surveillance rather than reactive. So we are bringing in more tech and data-enabled surveillance, and then we would like to sense and report these threats in real time. And we are also bringing in some other technologies and tools which can help the industry in their sustainability claims and also the other factors like animal and human welfare. So overall, we are seeing that we want to change this trend from compliance to culture mode. The third aspect that I want to talk is traceability. So the definition of traceability is the ability to trace and track product in the supply chain. So when I say trace, that means trace generally means tracing it back. So tracing it back, say from the consumer end towards the grower. When I say track, track means going forward in the supply chain. So at present, traceability systems, they demand that each and every product in the supply chain, especially fruit and vegetable, you should be able to know what is a one step forward and what is one step backward. So for example, a wholesaler in market should know from where it came. So it should know the grower and should know to whom they are supplying in the supply chain. So one step forward, one step backward is a standard traceability. At present, it's both paper and it's partially digital. And there are few issues in the traceability. For example, we do not have harmonized traceability standards, and there are few confidentiality and proprietary issues. So, if traceability is not robust in the supply chain, uh, if we need to recall a product, if it is unsafe for consumption, it could take days and weeks because it's really hard to track the product in the supply chain if you don't have digital means. So, what's happening now? It's moving from one step forward and one step backward towards end to end traceability. So, the product should be visible across the supply chain, not just one step forward and one step backward. So it's a through chain approach. And there are several new technologies. Blockchain has come into picture, and there are several other new standards come in place who are actually helping to improve the traceability. So, for example, the GS1 global standards is a unified approach to have one language across the globe. So you will see that GS1 standard becoming more popular along with their barcodes, which have been there forever. Now they are moving into two-dimensional barcodes and QR codes and digital links. So the technology is evolving, standards are evolving, that will facilitate better data flow along the value chain, and it will also allow us to real-time sensing and reporting of the product where it is. And this traceability now is actually consumer focused rather than supply chain focused, and it will help to prevent and minimize food fraud. And if there's a need to recall a product, we can also minimize the impact and by recalling the unsafe product in a very short time. So our yeah, there's another slide here to demonstrate the complexity of traceability that is there. For example, in Australia, this is related to melons. So melon seed, which could be bred in US, can go to Southern America, come back to US. So the seed gets processed in US, exported to Australia, and then seedling from nursery can go to multiple farms. So a farm here somewhere in Australia could receive pesticides from China, Germany, and then fertilizer can come from interstate. So all the inputs that were used in production of melons, a grower has to maintain the register of that input. That is part of their internal traceability. So the product, which is actually the melon, which is grown on farm, then they have to make sure that it is traceable in supply chain. So it's both internal and external traceability that the grower has to combine, and then the product moves in the supply chain. It can be exported to New Zealand, Japan, UAE, Singapore, and finally that product goes on the supermarket shelf. So you can see that the traceability is very complex in terms of maintaining traceability, whether it's for biosecurity. Australia is very tough on biosecurity. So they don't want any diseases to come with seeds from other countries. And then they're also particular about food safety, that Australia's reputation is not at risk if a product goes to other markets. So maintaining traceability and implementing it's a very complex task. So I'll share with you a short video that explains why the 5 reasons why you need traceability. So that was a short video that we produced a few years ago to share with industry and showing them the benefits of having traceability. Uh, One of the another reason is that, as we know, growers have all food safety controls in place on farm and in packing sheds. But still, accidents happen. So if an unsafe product has gone to market, if you have a robust traceability, you can recall that product. So traceability is another risk reduction tool for growers and industry in the supply chain. So you can see a whole range of labels on fruit. This is for watermelons and rock melons. Some labels, say for example on the left, they're quite simple. They don't give much information about the fruit. They just tell the grower their address, and they're also trying to market fresh is best naturally. And then you see another label which is having 2D barcode here, guaranteed sweet. And then you see another label here, Dawson Melon Company. They're trying to sell brand Australia. And then if you scan this, you will get more information about the product. Similarly, there's another label here down on the left, again with a QR code on watermelon, giving you the more information about product. So in some products in horticulture, traceability is a real challenge. For example, you see on your screen, if you are interested, you can even scan the QR code and see where it takes you. If you use your smartphone, you can try to scan the QR code on the screen. So one of the biggest challenge for products like watermelon is it could be 5 to 7 kg or maybe 8 kg fruit. These are generally cut into quarters or halves at retail before they are sold. So even if one watermelon carries a label like this, how do you transfer that information and data to consumer through those pieces? So that was one of the biggest challenge in Australian market, and we were doing a project where we brought in various participants in the project. For example, some melon growers and a marketing group, and Melon Australia is the peak industry body. And then we brought in a traceability solution provider, and then we brought in supermarkets. Woolworths is in Australia and Countdown is in New Zealand. The idea was to bring all supply chain participants together in the project so that we can demonstrate a solution. So what we did, we demonstrated that yes, you can transfer the data from one fruit to its cut pieces. You can see on the screen the cut watermelon. It was cut in store, and there's a scanner used to scan the QR code on the whole fruit, and the data was transferred to the labels which were applied on the cut fruit. So on the cut fruit, you can see the consumer gets information on when the fruit was cut and the best before date and all other information. And when they scan the QR code on this watermelon, you see on the left-hand side of the screen, and the consumer can see the grower name of the grower, the location where it was grown, harvested on, what date the fruit was harvested, how long it was in the supply chain, when this fruit was cut, and what was the weather like, and then the variety. And then you can also see the certifications. So Fresh Care is for food safety, HARPS is for food safety, SEDEX is for ethical production. So now, and there is a whole range of information that consumer get about this fruit. Now this consumer is interested in all the information about the fruit. So when we looked at the data, what consumers were really interested in this traceability pilot, we saw that nearly 100% of them actually watched the video of the grower. And then they were interested in recipes, and they also gave feedback on the piece of fruit that they ate, which directly went to the grower. And interestingly, these consumers, they were interested in freshness index when this fruit was harvested, because some consumers are really concerned that the supply chains are becoming long and complex and intricate. So freshness is one of the issues. So you can see on the map, and these hotspots in Australia and New Zealand is where the consumers were scanning the fruit. So you can see across eastward of Australia and New Zealand, consumers were scanning these watermelons which went through the supply chain. And then another aspect that we are looking at is where are the gaps in supply chain. So we were doing real-time monitoring of fruit, especially the data on temperature, humidity, light. So we were actually exploring how we can improve the supply chain in terms of from the farm to the markets, and then the fruit went through a phytosanitary treatment, and then it was airlifted to New Zealand, and then it was distributed in New Zealand. So the growers and the industry is interested in this real-time data to know the supply chain's condition, what's happening, and what quality do you expect at the other end. So just to wrap up traceability, so there are three aspects in traceability. One is digital traceability. Yes, we need to have digital systems to capture both internal and external traceability, but then we need to have physical traceability. That means we need to have labels. You cannot replace labels with digital traceability. Thirdly, we need to validate and verify the systems. So each and every grower or industry participant can say they have great traceability system. We need to validate and verify those systems, whether they are functioning or not. So I'll share some brief work in progress, how we are working, some of the projects, which are very broad projects that we are doing. So the idea of these projects is to meet the expectations of consumers as well as regulators. But at the same time, you want to keep the industry sustainable and profitable and to grow. So a couple of examples. So for example, one project on the left, which is grow sweeter citrus with less water. So here we are improving the quality of citrus with regulated deficit irrigation. So we saw some 10 to 15% increase in the fruit juice sweetness. But this regulated deficit irrigation is really needed in Australia, especially during drought periods. There's acute shortage of water. Yes, during floods there's a massive supply, but when it is needed during summers, there could be acute shortage. So this project is looking at how irrigation, so like an agronomic practice, can improve the quality of fruit. So this project was largely targeted at improving the quality of fruit going to China, because they're really interested in sweet fruit and very little acid. So it was aimed to improve quality of the product for a particular market. Another example is clean coastal catchments. So this project was targeted at products like blueberries and macadamia nuts. Um, some communities, they have concern about the environmental impact that some of the horticultural production systems are causing. So there's excessive flow of nitrogen from production fields into waterways, which could potentially harm marine life and create all sorts of issues in the environment. So our department is working with these growers across industry in blueberries, macadamias, and bananas, how to minimize their nitrogen use and how to recycle this fertilizer in that sense. So this project is actually looking at improving the sustainability of these industries. Again, that is also an aspect of quality. How it's aspect of quality? Because consumer can actually these days boycott a product when they know that it is not sustainably grown. So it's really important to maintain consumers as well as community confidence in horticulture production. This project is on food safety that I recently finished, where we were exploring the development of a new technology to kill or inactivate foodborne pathogens and some post-harvest fungal pathogens on fresh produce. So this was a 5 to 6 year project that we did. Cold plasma is just ionized air. You can ionize a stream of gas with high voltage, and it creates a lot of free radicals which have potential to kill the microbes. So we started this project with a small proof of concept with one plasma head in 2016. Later on, we did a lot of work on technology development, developing post-harvest treatment protocols to kill the pathogens and look at its potential for reducing the post-harvest spoilage of fruit, vegetables, and nuts. We looked at a whole range of commodities. As I said, in Australia, the research is industry funded, so you need to make sure that you translate what you do. So we were exploring the option of scaling it up so that we could develop a prototype, and we did it, though the project was slightly delayed because of COVID. But we developed a cold plasma prototype, and we actually demonstrated to the industry that if you have this cold plasma system in your post-harvest packing sheds, you can actually add it as a supplementary treatment to improve your food safety and post-harvest outcomes. So this technology is currently being negotiated for licensing, but it's a highly promising technology, which has even potential to go in countries like India as well. Another example that I want to share is with Safe Melons. It's a national program that I lead. The reason I want to share this slide was that uh, cantaloupes, honeydews, and these melons, we call them rock melons here in Australia, but yeah, so they are musk melons. They create huge issues in terms of food safety, and it's a big industry. It's nearly over $100 million industry in Australia, and fair bit of melons are exported to some premium markets. So food safety in melons is complex. Some of the outbreaks in the US and other countries, they have killed a lot of people. So, to handle complex problems, you need a whole of the chain approach where you engage with a lot of organizations. So in this program, you can see we were providing food safety R&D. We provided best practice to the growers, implemented it, and then we do continuous monitoring and surveillance. We train people, outreach, and then we also provide help desk service to talk to growers. But the interesting story of this program, which has been running now for 7 years, is that we have nearly 17 organizations engaged with us. Some of them are state government agencies, growers' bodies, funding bodies, and some federal agencies. So, to deal with complex problems, you need a program approach. It's not just a project, it's a program. So, that's another example where we apply science to develop solutions which actually get translated in the market. So I'll just wrap it up. Before I wrap it up, I would like to share that Hort Innovation, which is Australia's peak industry body for growers, and it funds R&D. 6 years ago, they signed an MOU with ICAR to promote and R&D collaboration between Australian and Indian organizations. Just a month ago, now they are looking at developing an Australia-India Center of Excellence in Horticulture. So I hope it will create more opportunities to work together with Indian counterparts. This is where I studied and graduated. So I'm looking forward to this Australian Indian Center of Excellence in Horticulture. So I think if I have to wrap it up in terms of where we are heading towards, we need a combination of three major things. One is we need a good quality science combined with outreach, which is how to engage with your stakeholders. And thirdly, we need networks. Uh, if we want to really see a change in the system, we need to combine all these three. As I gave example of safe melons, safe melon is a classic example where we have combined all three drivers like science, outreach, and networks. So my take on fresh produce quality, safety, and traceability in the Indian context is that there's a huge opportunity for supply chain transformation, and we understand that the industry is evolving in India. The imports have grown up, domestic production has tremendously increased, but we really need to work on how we develop solutions which are fit for local growers and local markets. So it has to be very targeted approach. So the solutions which are fit and made for Australia, they are not necessarily good for Indian market and Indian conditions. So we need to look at the technologies which are simple and cost effective, and they can be implemented in the Indian supply chain context. And some of the examples that I see where India has done very well is in terms of traceability. And those examples are very impressive. If you look at um, table grapes exported to Europe, they have an excellent traceability system. If you look at chilies export from Andhra, so I looked at their traceability system is again really good. And then there are a few other networks that especially which are export focused because they need to have that traceability and safety in place. They have evolved those systems. But how do we basically take those systems just from export to the domestic market is a challenge. There's a lot of work and a lot of research needed in that space, and working with industry and government is really critical. So for us here, I think it's a grand challenge, we call it. If you look at the number of words that I put it in my statement, it's like how to consistently, sustainably, and ethically produce and supply a quality and safe and nutritious and traceable food to conscious consumers. It's it, it it's itself a grand challenge for not only Australia or India, for the rest of the world. It's really a big challenge. And in today's talk, a lot of work is funded through industry, hot innovation, hot frontiers, different peak industry bodies, and federal government of Australia. And I acknowledge those funding bodies. And I also acknowledge my team, which does all the work in the lab and some on the field. And they're really wonderful people, those who um, do really hard work and to make the research program successful. And finally, this is a photo from last year, Diwali. Sydney's Opera House was lit to celebrate Diwali, and I hope it's lit again tomorrow. And I wish all the audience a very happy Diwali, and and I'll be happy to take any questions or discussions from here onward.
Thing, thanks to you and your team. And let me assure you that you have earned to celebrate Diwali much more vigorously and happily in comparison to last year.
Thank you,
You
sir.
can you can celebrate that. Before we take up questions, I request Dr. Shailendra Rajan to quickly moderate the talk and just try to link with the Indian scenario, which Dr. S.P. Singh also tried.
Thank you, sir. It was a comprehensive lecture on the future trends. Particularly, the we had a scenario of Australia, particularly with examples, but those all are important for India also. He introduced about the work being done at Australia. I will not go in detail with that, but we had a better understanding and how the traceability is important, how the horticulture sector is important, particularly as far as all these aspects are there. So he has given the example of Australia as vis-a-vis India, that post-harvest losses are about 33%. In Australia, that it is at the consumer level, but it is in a different way in India. So we had examples, and he has given the which are the challenges, and he explained those. Those most of them are similar to the Indian conditions, but the consumers' based challenges are more. These are becoming more important, and it is important particularly for the whole supply chain. Effect of the distribution and the export on the he has given the examples, and particularly he has given the example of the demand of the consumers, particularly in India. People like delicious, but the gala is being produced in Australia. How to switch to those varieties? That is important as the production level. So he has mentioned that challenges are too many, but the dynamics of the quality, particularly if we say the quality definition, it changes, and what will be the scenario in 2050, and the consumer role will be important in deciding it, and the flavor is becoming one of the most important factor as far as quality is concerned. He has mentioned that, and interestingly the facts that consumers sustainability, they are just looking for the sustainability of the production system also. Even the water and carbon footprints are being are a matter of concern, and he stressed that the authenticity is important, particularly related with the information which is available with the product. The promotion is important. One of the tool Australia is using it, and under Indian conditions also, we can use it for the promotion of the Indian products. Then again, sustainability framework, that is important, and the carbon neutral, and particularly it may be carbon negative. Those are attracting consumers in Australia, but it may be globally, but it may be the scenario may be same in other places also. The changes in the quality perception in 2050, it will be quite different. He is very well detailed, and example of the foods, those are good mood foods, but those are the some of the causes for the contamination also, and the possibility which is being considered as a threat in different parts of the world, particularly the leafy vegetables, salads, berries. These are the major responsible products for the infection. But the fresh product uh, has been improved, the quality has been improved, and so its traceability is improved. But the interesting fact that whole genome analysis for the detection, this is important, because it may be one of the finest tool where we can get idea about it. So interesting explanation of the way how the microbial contamination can take place. He has given that, and contaminated water and manures are important source, he said, and that may be sometimes because the livestock are near to the horticulture produce area, then impacting the fresh fat produce through the water, dust storm, flood. In Australia, it is beautiful slides have been presented, but it may be common in India also. But food safety measures at different levels of supply chain, those are important, and issues of the food safety compliance and how to proceed with the food safety culture mode that he has mentioned. Then traceability, its definition has been given by him, and the how it is becoming dynamic also, and different issues and importance of the digital traceability has given some of the issues related with the blockchain, and the support with the standard the traceability has been given. Then to avoid the food fraud, avoid this food fraud, he has mentioned that traceability is complex, and gave example of balance how all inputs are having internationally at different places. Those are coming, and one has to document all the details. Particularly, the producer has to document it. Then at the end of the talk, we had the excellent video on the reasons why traceability is important, and the steps involved, and the important factors which are going to affect. Then how label are informative, particularly traceability, as far as traceability and the quality of the product is concerned, we could see in some of the slides. Then problems in traceability, particularly in cut fruits, where the example of the watermelon was given. It is important how they are retaining the data with the cut fruit details. Information is can be retrieved from the label by the consumer. Then video of the growers is important, because sometimes he said that it is one of the most important factor by for the consumers. They can see the videos of the producer. So mentioned about the supply chain, how the monitoring can be done, and a better export can take place. Internal, external, and physical traceability he has explained beautifully. Beautiful presentation of the work. He specifies several of the examples, particularly the sweet citrus with the less water, and where the technology for production is important, the water partial irrigation. Then clean coastal catchment, which is related with one of the consumers' demand, where the sustainability is there, and the cold plastic for the food safety, the technology which can be particularly taken away by different countries also. Then safe melon, food safety, and the whole supply chain. He has given example how those safe melons are there. Then hot innovation, which is going to be one of the Australian Center for the Excellence in Horticulture. That is most important. He mentioned about it, and definitely in near future we might be getting much of the knowledge generated in the Australia, particularly the WDHA. So he has beautifully summarized in a few sentences, and also mentioned that the traceability issues of our grape and chilies from Andhra Pradesh, those are excellent. And in single sentence he has summarized what is the definition, particularly how what he means about the this food safety. So thank you very much. We had a very great lecture by a learned speaker on the different aspects of post harvest management of the fresh fruit produce. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan. It was really a great lecture. Dr. Kalia, would you like to add quickly?
Okay, sir. Thank you. It was an excellent talk, as you have mentioned, and which was excellently moderated also, touching all aspects, leaving nothing that has not been touched. But I would say that Dr. Singh has concentrated upon future consumer-oriented farming, taking health of the consumers into consideration, and he has detailed all aspects which are required to finally ensure safe fruits or horticulture produce to the consumers whose health can be uh, assured. And another important thing that what are the quality measures that we are going to take by 2050. So this is futuristic talk, which always, as the webinars, the main motto is future horticulture, which has to be futuristic, not what is going on today. So that very well meets out its objective. An important point in that, from breeding aspects, I feel that the flavor and appearance, these are the major two important aspects from consumers preference point of view. The consumers look forward for better flavor, which is required, and breeders need to concentrate upon these aspects to bring out new varieties which are high flavored. And the appearance, because the buying of the produce in the market is based on the appearance, not what is there internally in the produce. So that is very important from farmers point of view also, that if the appearance has been good, then farmers can make good money from that. And the other important factors that he has mentioned, that big fruits, how to take them to market and how to trace the data from breeders point of view, as the families are becoming unitary in India also, and a lot of efforts are being made. Earlier we used to concentrate on producing bigger sized fruits and other things, but now the trend is to go for smaller sized fruits. As far as this watermelon is concerned, ice box watermelons, which can be put into the refrigerator easily, and one or two member in the family can enjoy those fruits. So then that cut fruit business, I mean, you have not to worry about that. But till then, when we have such thing, and this is a good technology that he has mentioned about that. And other important point is from the uh, nutrient film technique based production of especially the leafy vegetables, how to monitor the high uptake of nitrogen especially, which could be not healthy for the consumer. So those aspects he has mentioned, which is very good. So overall, I think that we have had excellent talk, and I hope that the viewers might have been benefited to a greater extent. And all those sector scientists who are breeders and production scientists, how to enhance the quality of the produce, talking about high tech technology towards 2050, it's important aspects. Thank you very much for the nice talk, Dr. Singh.
Thank you, Dr. Kalia, for nicely supplementing the moderation and overall talk. Now there are a few questions. We will take one by one. Shivangi, could you just run it? Dr. Ashpi Singh, if you can read, you go ahead. You read the question and then answer.
On post-harvest losses in Australia on vegetables from farm to retail and retail to consumer. Yes, the post-harvest losses in Australia, as I said, the quantum, the magnitude of losses is almost similar to what we have in India, nearly one third, but it is mostly at the consumer end. So it's food wastage that I would call. And another area where there's a lot of wastage is in some commodities. Two top commodities in wastage are banana and melons. Those two commodities, they are wasted a lot at farm level. This is because of very high standards. So having a black mark or dot on banana is not considered good enough for supermarket quality. So, but Australia is working on it. There's a cooperative research center on fighting food waste. The idea here is to increase the acceptance of slightly blemished fruit among consumers. So there's a lot of emphasis on consumer education, and some supermarkets are selling, like they're calling them ugly fruits. and they are sold at slightly lower prices. But that is actually helping to educate the consumer that uh, they are as good as the good looking fruits, but they should accept them more. And the
Thank
second
you.
question is on the yes, New South Wales spends nearly $1 billion in terms of supporting R&D, and also supporting the industry in terms of all the rural assistance grants during hard times, during floods, droughts, any natural disaster. The state government provides relief to the growers, and also provides them new research and tools how they can cope with those natural disasters. And thirdly, in terms of human resources deployed to trace and track, yes, if a system is digital and if it is robust, you don't need much of human resources. Even growers have also now really automated processes for putting labels. Inline labeling machines are there, and even we also experimented laser labeling, so that we don't need plastic based label or paper based label. We could actually make a tattoo on the fruit, but it's not very successful on all fruits, and depending upon the commodity. But yes, it is resource intensive, but industry is doing, and it's part of their requirement. And there's another question on export
Apricot.
of apricot from Australia. I'm afraid that Australia is a very small producer of apricots. Australia actually imports apricots, both fresh and dried, from New Zealand and from Europe. So we are really not big in apricot
What is
export. And there's also a question on food safety measures on delicate produce. Yes, organic produce is a growing category, and the food safety measures for organic produce are to get certification. They are very different to normal produce. So the range of chemical pesticides and fungicides that you can use in farm, uh, that's totally different. And even in post-harvest cases, use of products like sodium hypochlorite or calcium hypochlorite, which is bleach, or chlorine, is not permitted. Yes, the whole produce category is delicate. So depending upon the product, but those measures are applied based on the tolerance of the product. So yes, that's a good question. In horticulture, when we work on a new technology or tool or a solution, the diversity is such that sometimes that tool or technology cannot be applied, say, within citrus, because of all the differences among oranges and mandarins versus limes and lemons. So when we say horticulture, so sometimes diversity can be a challenge, because you cannot have generic solutions in horticulture. For example, even if a post-harvest wax is applied, say, for example, in citrus, in case of oranges, yes, we can apply some waxes which are shellac based, or which do not allow fruit to breathe faster. But the same wax cannot be applied on mandarin. If you apply the same wax on mandarin, it will cause off flavor in the fruit. So in horticulture, yeah, so we love the diversity that horticulture presents, that the food that we enjoy. But in terms of the uh, even pre-harvest and post-harvest practices, it's really difficult to manage those processes.
Could you please announce your mail ID if it is not inconvenient to you?
Now I will actually announce it's sp.singh at dpi.msw.gov.au. So yeah,
You may like.
if you put my name in Google, Google would tell you my email ID.
Very good, very good, very good, very
So
good. It's okay.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, can you put a light on the premium market that has been seeking traceability of the produce uh, or
or pays
pays
premium price.
premium price? Could you kindly
Yeah,
please
so
get?
I can read that question. Yes, premium markets, yes, they all seek traceability of produce, but I'm afraid they don't pay any premium for traceability. Uh, Growers would like that premium to be paid on the traceability. Traceability has become an integral part of the quality, so you cannot
Yes.
expect any premium on traceable product. Uh, but having said that, in some products, the high value products, for example, cherries and honey, so those high value products, they are more likely to be counterfeited in export markets. For example, sometime Australian cherries, before they are harvested in Australia, they are on market in some other countries. So, so Australian cherry growers, they use very good quality traceability systems so that their product cannot be counterfeited. So, the value that you want to invest in traceability depends upon the value of your product. You know, so if we are selling premium wine, honey, manuka honey, or cherries, yes, you can have RFID tags on your product, because sometimes those cherries are sold for 85 or $100 a kilo. If you spend $1 on traceability on a kilo, that's not a big deal. So I think the solution that industry adopts on traceability depends upon the actual value of the product. So for Australian fresh produce industry, food fraud is one of the big issues in export markets. Because if Australian, say, citrus or avocado is going to get 3 or 4 times price in another market, um, there is clear incentive for uh, mislabeling and fraud.
Any other question, Shivangi? No. If there is no question, we had it very interesting, educative, futuristic, and I think quite beneficial to the Indian condition. I find lot many things which at least I have learnt, and I am sure those who have listened they must have also learnt, which can be used in Indian context. And certain thing, as we were discussing the price for traceability, one has to pay. If you are getting the additional information, the traceability should have some added advantage, and whether it is hidden or otherwise, traceability, I feel, I think the price is there, is there, and the future of horticulture is very bright. But the sustainability part, which Dr. Singh has clearly brought out, we have to, we the scientists have to work hard and maintain the sustainability of it. Though sustainability seems to be very simple, but it's very difficult to maintain. And sustainability is not the static one; it is add-on. Whatever research is going on, further you have to bring the improvement with the no reduction anywhere, no compromise at any stage. So it's good, and I was happy when he said that 50% of the food items are of horticulture origin. I'm also of that opinion, not only in Australia but throughout the world. If not now, later, I think horticulture foods will be dominating. They will be more than 50%. So horticultures need much more attention. And as Dr. Singh has clearly brought out the perishability, and now maintaining the quality with the perishable nature where water content is so high in the produce, and water itself is a source of contamination which he has clearly brought out. So we have to be very, very, very scientific. It's not difficult. Only thing the precautionary measures are to be taken. That's all. If you are negligent, yes, the all sort of things will happen. But if you are cautious, it's not difficult. And once you are used to it, then you will get a good quality only. Then you need not to be very, very, very cautious on that. You yourself has develop the habit of to remain always cautious about that. So I think there were lot many similarities in Indian and Australian thing, no? And something which India is producing, the Australia is not producing, or the seasons are different. So a lot of scope is there. And since some beginning has been made with some joint work, which he has mentioned, I think the further scope is there of a lot of collaboration in Indian horticulture and Australian horticulture, at least the germplasm, the genotype, and all sort of a thing. So with these words, I thank profusely Dr. S.P. Singh he and his team for doing a good job and delivering the lecture nicely, very clearly, no confusion at any stage. I'm thankful to the moderator, Dr. Rajan, and Dr. Pritam Kalia, who always do the good job, whether it is introduction or supplementing the moderation. Shawangi deserves a special credit for running it flawless. There was no problem in that. So I think once again I wish all of you and your friends happy Diwali, and particularly SP Singh celebrate the Diwali much more vigorously. Uh,
Happy Diwali,
we
everyone.
and we meet next Sunday with the new topic. Is Shivangi alert? Shivangi is alert. Yes, he is alert. With the topic water centering multi-dimensional approach for the advancement of Indian horticulture. So water is centering. We will be talking about when we are rich. When I use the word we, I mean the horticulture. Horticulture is rich in water. So we are going to have an interesting talk next Sunday. Till then, I think bye bye. Celebrate Happy Diwali once again. Thank you.
Okay, ji. Happy Deepavali.
Good. Thank you. Happy Diwali.
Thank you.